Welcome to my dojo. This is KungFuPizzaPrty, and I'm your host, Brandon Knight, and today I am going to be talking about my journey, my quest to build the ultimate martial art library. But here's the thing, I'm not talking about the ultimate martial art film library. Oh, no. Today, I'm going to be talking about my quest to create the ultimate martial art book library. Yes, this is a quest I began really more towards the beginning of this year. I think I mentioned on the show before that the book section of my library devoted to the martial arts is a little thin. And so I began working on this project of trying to put together the ultimate martial artist reading list, the definitive martial artist reading list. And I want to talk a little bit about what my process has been thus far and what the next steps are going to look like. But before I begin that, it is important to me that you know that here on KungFuPizzaPrty, I seek to deliver high-flying action in 30 minutes or less and serve up some wisdom one slice at a time. And I feel like we're going to be sharing a lot of wisdom here in today's episode. So the thought occurred to me a little bit earlier this year that the Bible, especially, particularly the Protestant Bible, is a book comprised of 66 additional smaller books, letters, apocalyptic literature, books of poetry, wisdom sayings, whole bunch of different things, right? And so the thought occurred to me, what would be the martial artist Bible? If we could take, just to throw a number out there, because that's just how my brain works, 66 of the most iconic, every martial artist must read books and compile them into one big volume that completely disregards copyright issues. I cannot physically staple all of these books together. That infringes upon a lot of people's rights. But if I could, what would be the 66 books that I would want to put in this definitive every martial artist must read volume? And as I've gone through this process so far, I am nowhere near the number 66 as I've been going down this quest. But I will also say that 66 is not a hard number for me. If I eventually get to the point where I'm like, hey, I only have 27, I'll just throw it out there. Or maybe eventually I get to 73, whatever the case may be. I'm just giving myself a number to shoot for just to get this project started. And so this process of candidating and then canonizing books into the Ultimate Martial Artist Bible has taken a few steps so far. There's been a few rounds of canonizing of candidating a few books and then canonizing a handful. I have canonized so far 15 books. I have 15 books that I believe that every martial artist should read at some point. I have several more books to still candidate, but let's go through the process. And so to begin this quest, I started in the most obvious place physically possible for me to begin: my own bookshelf. Now, the tricky part about going through my own bookshelf, my own book collection, when it comes to this martial arts section of my library, the tricky part is if I have a physical book, that means I already value it a lot, okay? But just because I enjoyed reading it, or I thought it was a fun read, or it made an impact on me, doesn't necessarily mean that it should be a must-read for all people. Did I really enjoy reading and messing around a little bit with Pro Wrestling Submission Moves by Judo Gene LaBelle? Obviously, I really liked reading that book. Do I think all martial artists should be required to read this? No. Maybe in some kind of like grappling, if I was solely focusing on grappling or professional wrestling or something, then yeah, sure, I could maybe throw it in there, but it's not necessarily a must read for all people. So that was the first step, was like, okay, what do I have in my library currently that I would say is something that all people need to read? Second step was then to take to the internet, because as you can imagine, I am not the only person on the planet who has ever attempted this kind of a project before, of putting together maybe not a martial artist Bible, as I've referred to it, but like the definitive reading list, the books that all martial artists should read. There were several blog posts, and what I did was I went through, I can't even remember now, 5 or 6 different blog posts of people's lists, and I used it at first as a check and balance to see, okay, what books have I already chosen from my own library? Do these lists support those? And the answer was yes. By and large, the books I had first written down to canonize these blog posts of other martial artists, other book lovers, they also reinforced that. I then went through and looked at any of the reoccurring books, any books that came up on multiple lists that were not part of my first round. I then went ahead and canonized them. There are going to be books that I have canonized that I have not actually read myself yet. And so there may come a point in this quest. I don't expect this to be a one and done episode. You are going to hear about this process more than once, so buckle up. There may come a point where I say, okay, I've actually now read this book and I don't think it's actually as impactful as people perceive it to be, so I'm actually going to uncanonize it. This is a fluid thing. We're not going to take this too seriously, right? So that was the second round. Started with my own bookshelf, moved to what other people have already put out there, grabbed a few more books that way. Third round was to talk to my brother. One of my brothers is also a martial artist, and he also is a big reader. He reads a ton of stuff, particularly in this kind of like martial art, warfare, masculine identity, kind of like that area. He's read a lot in those areas. So I showed him my list. He really liked what he was seeing so far. And then he recommended one additional book. He had one book. He's like, I think you should throw this into the list. So that took me up to the first 10 books. And I want to go ahead and pause here before I go on to what the next step was going to be. Because remember, I said I have 15 books. At this point, I have 10. So let me just go ahead and let you know what those 10 first few round books were. So here we go. The Art of War, The Book of the Five Rings, Bushido, The Soul of Japan, Hagakure, The Tao of Jeet Kune Do, Living the Martial Way, Tao Te Ching, Meditations on Violence, Zen in the Martial Arts, and Taijutsu Tactics. Now, it really doesn't matter if you're a martial artist or not. Some of those books may actually sound familiar to you. Some of these might be more inside baseball, like Taijutsu Tactics or Hagakure, but more than likely, you have heard of The Art of War. And depending on maybe your religious or philosophical background and personal studies, Tao Te Ching is probably also a familiar title to you as well. The Art of War by Sun Tzu is, of course, this book that has been popularized partially in the leadership business world of just a good book to read about how to lead other people. There's so much more to The Art of War than that, and I think some of the ways that even it is used within leadership circles kind of misses the point that is trying to be communicated in the book. But my goal is to do like full reviews here on the show of all of these books at different points, hopefully even get some like scholars and translators on here as well. Tao Te Ching, in case you're unfamiliar, is not the holy book of Taoism, but like the central book. They don't necessarily have those who practice Taoism and have a Taoist philosophy, don't necessarily have like a Bible, a Book of Mormon, a Quran, but Tao Te Ching is kind of like the origin book, so it's highly regarded. That might be the best way to explain what that book is. So that was the list after those first few rounds of going to my own bookshelf, checking online, other people's lists, and then talking to my brother. That takes me to the most recent round of seeking out candidates and candidating another 5 books. So if you are like a lifelong reader of martial art books and you're like, hey, what about just hold on a second. We'll see if that book you're thinking of is in this next 5. So I am part of a Facebook group community called Martial Art Book and Magazine Collectors or something like that. And it's a fun little community of just people sharing recent purchases, showing off pictures of their library that they've redecorated or expanded, looking for book recommendations. And by and large, I would say for Facebook, pretty healthy community. I haven't there's been like a few comments here and there that I'm like, you're a bit of a jackass. But by and large, it's been a really enjoyable community to be a part of. Anyway, so I had posted in this group, hey, this is the project I'm working on. Here's my list so far. What do you think? And what would you add to it? And overall, the affirmation of the list was positive. There was a few, not critiques as much as they were, hey, heads up. And I'll get into that here near the end of this talk today. But for the most part, people were saying, hey, this is a really good list of classics. And that's essentially what this list is so far. Again, if you've been a part of the martial arts for a while or been into the book world, the book side of things, you know that like the Book of the Five Rings, Bushido, the Soul of Japan, Living the Martial Way, Meditations on Violence, Zen and the Martial Arts, all of these are regarded, even like Zen and the Martial Arts, which is still a relatively new book. It's only like 15 years old, maybe. Like these books are regarded as like classics, must reads. So that was good. It was nice to hear even the comments that were like, hey, just so you know about this book. It was still nice to know, like, okay, for the most part, I'm off to a good start. I then got comments. Obviously I got comments. I then got comments. I should finish my sentences. I then got comments of what people would recommend. And most comments were like 1 or 2 books, 4 at the max. Except for one person who literally commented 50 individual titles. 50, 25 plus 25. That is how many books one person commented. And the person did say, I'm pretty sure there's going to be some doubles in here. And I skimmed through that person's comment at least once. And I did see a couple of the books that I have on the list already in there, so it may actually end up being closer to like 45, 40 additional books. But between that comment and then everybody else, got like another close to like 70 titles to go through. So I still have to like go through and really like sit and work through this list of books in of itself, this comment of 50 titles. I went through everyone else's, and what I did was any repeated answers, any answers that came up more than once, or maybe a title got several likes and positive responses from people reading the comments, I went ahead and added those to the list of 10. So that's how we go from 10 to 15. So the additional 5 books that came from the Facebook group include Karate Do, Art of Peace, which has nothing to do with the art of war, Bubishi, I apologize if I'm not saying that one correctly, Moving Zen, and The Unfettered Mind. So in total, again, 15 titles: The Art of War, The Book of Five Rings, Bushido, the Soul of Japan, Hagakure, The Tao Jeet Kune Do, Living the Martial Way, Tao Te Ching, Meditations on Violence, Zen and the Martial Arts, Taijutsu Tactics, Karate Do, Art of Peace, Bubishi, Moving Zen, and The Unfettered Mind. Now, the process of going through and sussing out all these additional books from the Facebook group trying to read, research, and whittle down, particularly this person's comment of 50 titles, that's going to take some time. So even now, if you're still thinking, well, what about this book? Like I said, there's going to be more episodes like this where I'm going to sit back and talk about my quest to create the Martial Artist Bible. And who knows, there may be some of these books I come back and say, you know what, I'm going to take this off. Or next time we do this, I might say, hey, I have another 6 titles I'm going to add here. 2 books that I'm interested in checking out. I don't know if they're going to make it onto the official list, but 2 that are in the comments. One is Jack Dempsey's book, Winning Championship Fights, Championship Winning, something like that. I can't remember the title exactly. And then another one was another book. The comment said, I'm not a Jeet Kune Do person, but Absorb What Is Useful by Dan Inosanto is a regular read for me. And I thought to myself, I am a Jeet Kune Do person, and I haven't read that book, so I should probably get on that. I'm assuming I'm going to enjoy it because it's within the art that one of the arts I have trained in. But just because again, like that first round, just because I enjoyed a book doesn't necessarily mean it should be a part of this canon that I'm seeking to build. Now, if you're still sitting there and you're like, but I really think you need to get this one book on your list. I just want to make sure you know about this one book, Brandon, please. Okay, the good news is you can always DM the show at KungFuPizzaPrty on Instagram, or follow the show over there. There will be a discussion post that goes up soon asking for book recommendations. So if you're still like, but I just want to make sure, since you're not telling us what's on this really long list that you still have to work on, I just want to make sure it's covered. Fine. You can still let me know. I'd be happy. I'm always happy to get more book recommendations. Let's talk now about some of the additional comments that were left that weren't necessarily about they weren't like specific book suggestions, but rather just heads up, a perspective brought as I was trying to put this list together. So, for example, one comment that was brought up was the fact that because of the nature of this project, I am going to be, in a way, very broad, even though I'm trying to find specific titles that fit, that are for all martial artists. There is still going to be a sense of it being very broad. For example, the person who left this comment, if somebody is really interested in Kung Fu, they may have very specific, very good books about very specific regions of Kung Fu, regional styles of Kung Fu. Or, you look at like Bow Staff, for example. Maybe there are 5 really good must-read books on Bow Staff. I'm going to only choose one. Right? I can't include all 5 because that might be 4 other spots that could go to 4 other books that cover other weapons, for example. You know what I mean? So because of the nature of this kind of a project, whether it's a specific region, a specific style, weapons, self-defense, whatever the case may be, there are going to be some classics that are going to get overlooked because I'm going a little broader, because I'm trying to make a list that would appeal to all martial artists, which is fair. Another good comment that I got was a call to be inclusive, and not necessarily inclusive in the sense of, hey, make sure that the authors represent a variety of different people, which is still a good reason to be inclusive. But this comment pointed out how the majority of the comments were on the big 3 martial arts that come from China, Korea, and Japan, because that's, the 3 most common places that we're going to think of when we think of the martial arts. This comment was saying, cool, from there, make sure you're including books that represent martial arts from Thailand, from Israel for Krav Maga, books on American Kempo. Again, I don't have any books on weapons at this point. I don't have any. This person's big focus was mostly on regions. Make sure you're not just talking about the big three. If you want to have a good, well-rounded Bible, well-rounded library, make sure that there are books that represent varieties of styles. And to go further, again, that should probably also include people who either are originally from those locations, a good combination of men and women voices in this kind of a conversation, but also religiously and philosophically as well. If you remember from my list, there's a good amount of Taoism represented, and Art of Peace is Shintoism adjacent, but there's no Buddhism, there's no Confucianism really represented in my list, and those are also religions and philosophies that are very pervasive in especially Asian martial arts. Oh, that reminds me, there's no HEMA. There is no historical European martial arts represented on the list thus far. So, yes, this idea of, hey, make sure you're making a well-rounded list, I think is a very good comment as well. Lastly, there was a bit of a concern, and then we're going to have to start wrapping up this episode, it looks like, but there was a bit of a concern raised over three of the titles that did make the list: Bushido, the Soul of Japan, Hagakure, and Taijutsu Tactics. When it comes to Taijutsu Tactics, the comment was just simply, hey, if you're looking for something in this category, which is kind of the ninjutsu category, I would recommend this book over that one. Which, by the way, I still have to go through that 50 book comment. But on the topic of ninjutsu, real quick, there's not a single Stephen Hayes book that's been recommended. Stephen Hayes, in case you don't know, it was like the guy who brought ninjutsu to the United States, student of Bujinkan, eventually formulated Toshindo, was writing books and articles for Black Belt Magazine out the wazoo there in the 80s, and I'm pretty sure not a single book of his has made it onto even the candidating list. Anyway, so that was the comment when it came to Taijutsu Tactics of hey, if you're looking for something in this category, I'd recommend this one over that book. But the big one for Bushido, the Soul of Japan, and Hagakure is one that is going to require me to read and research them thoroughly. I actually did just recently pick up a copy of Hagakure, so there may be a follow-up episode specifically on that book here in the near future. But basically, when it comes to these two books, these two came from the Google search round of my candidating process. I was going through all the blog posts, and these two come up all the time. They are both related to Bushido Code and Samurai. So they're both very highly regarded among other writers, other martial artists. The thing is, though, is that there is a bit of a concern, particularly nowadays, over the legitimacy of these books. If I can maybe oversimplify something that I'm going to have to more thoroughly research later. Basically, these two books were written very far after the fact, decades after the events, centuries even, from the events that they are telling, by people who were not even remotely part of the Japanese culture, and has at times in the books used mythology, legend, folklore, and put it forth as factual history. And it's that part that makes me a little okay, I could see the concern there. Because, to be fair, we have people who write books and histories on events and periods that happened way before by people who were not part of that specific culture all the time. That happens all the time, and sometimes it's good, and then sometimes we have the American education system and history. Yes, people have agendas when they write history. I am fully aware of that. I think one comment, just to kind of like summarize this little like heads up that people gave on these two books, I think the best comment to kind of summarize this even more is that Bushido, The Soul of Japan, and Hagakure were written way after the fact by people who were not even remotely tied to that culture, whereas Meditations on Violence was written by somebody, and the comment said, who been there, done that, which reinforced in my mind that Meditations on Violence definitely needs to be on the list then. And that's where I'm at right now when it comes to this whole putting together the ultimate reading list, martial artist reading list. And yes, some of you are out there thinking to yourself, and I agree, there's something book it related that I could be doing here. It's a show that incorporates pizza, and now I'm talking about books. There's something there. I just need to work on it, work on some idea a little bit further there. But before we go, because our time is quickly running out, let me just give you the list one more time. The Art of War, The Book of Five Rings, Bushido, The Soul of Japan, Hagakure, The Tao of Jeet Kune Do, Living the Martial Way, Tao Te Ching, Meditations on Violence, Zen in the Martial Arts, Taijutsu Tactics, Karate Do, Art of Peace, Bubishi, Moving Zen, and The Unfettered Mind. But it's time to end this episode, so thank you all for listening. If you haven't yet already, please rate and review the show wherever you get your podcasts. Pass this episode along to a friend. Remember, there will be a discussion post going out if you want to throw some book ideas out there. Please follow the show on Letterboxd, KungFuPizzaPrty, where you can get a review of the movies before the episodes drop. Check out my YouTube channel, Studio 219, a place for faith and pop culture, and check out the other great shows here on the Anazao Ministries podcast network, like Why I Don't Like, Systematic Geekology, and my sister show, My Seminary Life. Thanks again for listening. This has been Kung Fu Pizza Party, where I've delivered high-flying action in 30 minutes or less and served up some wisdom one slice at a time.